Yeah, thank you. Goodness, this is loud.
It's already on.
Okay.
So if you want to take it, just grab it and walk around.
You might, yeah.
I'm not going to introduce them. We're going to ask them.
So you'll stay here until the... You have a name. Yeah.
Where is he?
David.
Let me go speak to him. You guys say hello to him. Adjust it as we go. You're going to do...
Welcome everyone and then...
You're going to welcome them?
Yes, and then you can just commence with the program. Good evening, students. Let us please settle down. We are ready to commence with the event. Thank you, guys. Really loving the energy from all of the students tonight. This is exactly why we are having an event like this. So we are ready to commence. First of all, a warm welcome to the DVC, representatives of the ED's office, representatives of the Vice Chancellor's office, as well as all other NWU student staff. Welcome to our student leaders from the various campuses attending today, as well as the students, which I believe is the most important tonight, along with our esteemed guest, which we are really happy to have. So from my side, from the SEC Society's office, just a quick introduction before we commence with the program. This event was held in 2022 the last time, and I think it is such an amazing honor, and we are extremely grateful to see this number of students pitching up for this event. There's an old Zulu saying that goes, "Ungangijima uma inlu yaku ibulili umlilu," which means that you do not run away when your house is on fire. And I think metaphorically, South Africa's political house is on fire. And that's why we are having discussions like this today, to see how we can rebuild a future where we as young people can truly live in a country that is prosperous and that is successful. So we are really happy to have this event. Welcome to all the esteemed guests. We hope you'll enjoy your stay with us. And I'll now introduce the host, Mike Sham, to commence the event for us. Thank you so much.
Good evening, welcome. This is fantastic to see such enthusiasm. My name is Mike Sham. I host a podcast called State of the Nation, which I'm sure many people here watch. We are live streaming this event, and let's hope that this remains productive. The intention of tonight is to we've got representatives from most of the big parties here, and we want to ask them about their manifestos. We want them to explain to you why they should vote for those parties. So we are going to ask them questions based on their manifestos. We will ask them questions that question their answers. So, and later on in the evening, we will be asking you to put your questions forward to our panel. So if you've got questions, please make a note of them. And later on, we're going to have roving microphones, and it'll be great to get input from such an enthusiastic audience. First off, I am not a great believer in protocol, and I think that the people that need a biggest hand are all of you that have attended tonight. So please, big round of applause for everybody here. And then we're going to welcome our panel. And then we're also going to welcome the higher-ups in your university, the VC, and everybody that is here. Thank you for allowing us to do this event on your behalf. We hope that this helps to move the country forward. That's what we want to achieve today. So let me introduce the panel. Right, firstly, I do have some assistants, and I have a passionate critical thinker, speaker, academic from the Eastern Cape, a political risk journalist, a strategist, a consultant, and an all-round great guy, Dr. Ongama Mtimka. Right. Then, representing the parties, representing the governing African National Congress. This is fantastic. I need to start all of my podcasts like this. We have, representing the African National Congress, MEC from the Northwest, Oageng Molapisi. Right, and it goes without saying, you are well-educated students. Let's be polite to everybody and give everybody a chance to speak. Next, representing the Democratic Alliance, their student organization federal leader, Liam Jacobs.
That's the thing, eh?
Everyone's going to get that blue except for you.
Yeah.
Our next representative is from
Wait,
a party that you may have heard
gentleman
of,
at the far
the
right.
Economic Freedom
What is
Fighters.
it with?
Now, as okay.
Oh, best you get up there and hang up.
Right, right.
Yeah. No, you and I both.
Listen. Some of us, ladies and gentlemen, some of us are old and we can't be here all night. So let's move this along. As advertised, Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi will be joining us. He's not Ndlozi will be joining us. He's not here at the moment. But standing in for him until he arrives, we've got a Member of Parliament for the EFF, Mr. Matusi Montwedi. Representing the Freedom Front Plus, another Member of Parliament, Heloise Denner.
At least no one's doing. Oh, there it is.
From the heads.
Representing ActionSA, we have got the Fix SA Member for Higher Education, and that is Dr. Tutu Faleni. Build One South Africa has sent their Deputy President, the Deputy Leader, and that is Nobuntu Hlazo-Webster. And last but definitely not least, from Mzansi, we have their Youth and Student Chapter Coordinator, Lawrence Manaka. So as I said, we're going to be putting some questions to our panel based on their manifestos. We want to hear what these parties stand for. So let's give them a chance to tell us what they stand for. We're not here to listen to speeches. We want to hear answers. And we're first going to look at some of the social angles. So we're going to kick off looking at the issue. You've got a whole lot of students in front of me. We're looking at education and we're looking at social grants. So we're going to go straight to the African National Congress, MEC, social grants. You have put in your manifesto that you're going to increase the social relief of distress grant, right? The President is touting this as a triumph, even though in most countries paying grants would be a sign of failure because of unemployment. But tell us, this increase in social grants that's in your manifesto, the country's already running deficits. Where are we going to get money from to pay more grants?
Thank you very much, Professor. ANC has always had a plan. It can't be that we are where we are after 30 years. Then we don't have a plan to make sure that we pay millions of children social grants. So the plan is there, and the President already have promised South Africans that we will make sure that all South Africans, all the people, they will get their social grants.
You've also promised, let's give everybody a chance. You've also promised more subsidized housing.
Yes.
At what point do you start giving title deeds to our citizens?
Can you repeat again?
Sorry?
Can you repeat again?
At what point do you start giving title deeds instead of more subsidized housing?
We are giving people subsidies almost every week. We are giving. There is no way that we can have houses, we can build houses, then we don't give people subsidies. And the title deeds also. We are giving people title deeds almost every week.
Okay. To the Democratic Alliance, you've also said that you're going to increase the social grants. But didn't the President say that the DA is going to take the social grants away?
And that's quite frankly the biggest lie that we find, is that the President often says that NSFAS is going to go away and that social grants are going to go away. And that is not the reality. If anything, the Democratic Alliance is a party that actually understands what social grants are meant for. We believe, number one, that a social grant is not meant to be a way of life. It's not meant to be something that you keep your whole life. It's meant to be something that gets you out of poverty or gives you the means to get out of poverty. So we're saying, instead of just having this 350 rand, there's no dignity inside of a 350 rand. We are saying increase the grants. We are saying increase the grants so as to ensure that people have the capacity to uplift themselves out of poverty. We understand that many people will say that there's no money for social grants, and many people do in fact say that, but the reality of the day is that there is money, it is just not being used correctly.
Now, the EFF have promised a lot. The EFF they're going to bet the farm. They said they're going to double social grants. There's going to be 5,000 rand for unemployed graduates. They're going to send scholars overseas to top universities. Where's all this money going to come from?
Thank you very much for having us. We indeed, as the EFF, in our detailed manifesto, have committed that we are going to double the social grants, because we believe that all of us black South Africans are product of being taken care of by our grandparents who did that through getting social grants, and it is not enough. The value for money, what they are receiving is very little. So what we are saying as the EFF is that we have positions in government that are useless, that are not needed, that we can save money from those positions. You have in government you have about 30 deputy ministers who, even when a minister is not there, they can't come in. They can't even attend cabinet meeting if a minister is not there. So what is the importance of having deputy ministers? You have each deputy minister having a staff of not less than 10 people in his office or in their office, not earning anything less than 1.5 million a year. So we want to do away with positions of deputy ministers so that we save all that money, that we only see that money going into networks of where we see that money going through network of patronages, because the president appoints these deputy ministers as people that assist to pursue his own agenda, but the agenda that is not linked into anything developmental in the country.
Right. So you've also promised spacious houses, spacious quality houses.
I can't hear you.
You have been in your manifesto, you're going to provide spacious quality houses.
Yes. We believe as the EFF, top of our manifesto is the land. We need to give people land for them to be able to build houses of their own. But how we are going to do that as the EFF is that we wanted to have a state bank that is going to see to it that the missing middle, our people get money so that they are able to build quality houses. We have also demonstrated through our own internal party funding that we do build houses for the needy within our communities. It has always been quality houses. So people must look where we come from. We've built quality houses with the EFF money. Now what will happen with government money? We will give people decent houses, because the current structure of the RDP houses under the ANC government. There's nothing decent about them. You don't have, our people are still treated like in the apartheid era where there's not even a flushing toilet inside these so-called structures. We want to make sure that there's dignity in the provision of services, and it is only through the EFF government that will ensure that we provide quality services to our people.
Okay, let's move next to you, to the Freedom Front Plus. Heloise, Dena, you have come up with an interesting proposal around education, and that is higher pay for teachers at poorer schools. That seems like a very common sense approach. So what are you suggesting, that the poorer the school, the more the teachers get paid?
Mike, actually, and thank you. Let me just say thank you for having me today, and thank you for all of you who are here. It's very important to be an informed voter, so thank you for coming to listen to us to make an informed decision. So what the Freedom Front Plus says is that there should be higher incentives for teachers at poorer schools to enable those teachers to go the extra mile, to give more attention to children in poorer schools. And why we say that is because our education system currently under the ANC government is deplorable. And I think there's no one here that would differ from that standpoint, except for the 5 ANC members there. So,
Right.
so what we need,
Are the Freedom Front Plus, what is your policy with regards to housing?
with regards to housing.
Housing.
Well, first of all, it's important to give title deeds to people. Instead of making promises, give people title deeds for the houses that they have and that they need. And then we also have to look at land, for instance. Use government land that is lying vacant, that is not being used. Instead of arable agricultural land, use government land. We have a housing crisis in South Africa. We have to look into that housing crisis, but then we have to give people the dignity of a title deed instead of a promise.
Dr. Tutu Faleni from ActionSA. On grants, you have said 2 things which I'm trying to put together in your manifesto. You said that under ActionSA you would increase social grants, but you would eliminate the broad reliance on social grants. Which one is it?
Thanks, Mike. Our position is, firstly, we support the idea of grants, the policy of social grants, but we don't need people to be completely dependent on grants. You don't need people to stay dependent on grants. You need to reduce the number of people who are dependent on grants, because the economy cannot afford to have an ever-increasing number of people who are dependent on grants. Right? So you need to decrease the number of people who are dependent on grants. And you do that by creating jobs. People need to get employment so that they are self-sufficient. You need to increase entrepreneurship. People must open businesses. You must make it easy for people to open businesses so that people are able to sustain themselves economically. But at the same time, historically, we are aware as ActionSA that you have people who are still trapped in poverty because of the legacy of apartheid. And we intend to introduce a universal basic income grant stimulus where people will progressively get an amount of 790 and it will increase as the years go by. And we expect people who get that grant to be able to contribute towards economic growth. So reduce the number of people who are dependent on grants by increasing employment, by encouraging entrepreneurship, and progressively increase social grants that you give to the most destitute population.
Build One South Africa, Bosa, Nobuntu, Hlazo-Webster. Where does your party stand on grants?
Good evening, Mike, and thank you so much for having us, and good evening to all the Northwest University students. So where we stand on grants is that we live in a country where you cannot have a situation where there are no grants. First of all, there are parts of stimulating the economy. You need to have spend, and you need to have that consumer activity happening. However, similar to some of the colleagues who've spoken today, you need to be able to know that this is something that can become a lever to pull people out of poverty and to move them into work. Our focus as Build One South Africa is on putting a job in every home. And people often ask how, and that's an important question. When you look at where we are now, we have an over-reliance on the mainstream economy to be able to employ people. The reality is that 70% of young people in this country are unemployed. And so the mainstream economy right now cannot absorb all those young people. And so you have to expand the economy. How do you do that? You first of all invest in township economies. So when you talk about township economy, often people speak about only small businesses that we have there now. People speak only about, the small spaza shops, but you need to have a vision that sees bigger than that and can see beyond that. You need to have innovation. You need to be able to invest in science. You need to be able to invest in manufacturing in townships, in the creative economy in townships, and start to have the kind of businesses that can actually take South Africa to the world. And so that is what we have in our manifesto, to say, let's invest in the township economy. Let's make sure that we're investing in skills in township economy. And let's see businesses that can flourish and actually take South Africa to the world.
Okay, fantastic. You're jumping the gun. We're going to get to the economy in a minute. Lawrence Manaka from Rise Mzansi, you've got a different approach to grants.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much to yourself, host, and a good evening to everyone here. So I think, look, what Rise Mzansi is trying to do is create a equal, prosperous, and united South Africa in one generation. And Rise Mzansi believes that, given where South Africa is right now, there is a need essentially to, first of all, increase the kind of grants that we have so that they meet the poverty line, right? So the first thing that you want to do is to ensure that you increase the social grant that parents are currently getting, or basically children are currently getting, right, to ensure that it goes to the poverty line. But Rise Mzansi does not want to essentially keep people depending on social grants, and therefore we are working towards ensuring that everyone in this country actually has employment. And we're saying that the first level of that is getting rid of the corrupt leadership that we currently have, because we understand that the current money that we have that is not creating employment, it's because it's lining the pockets of corrupt politicians.
Okay. At this point, I'm going to turn to our educated, well-versed man here, Dr. Ongama and Mtimka, for a few follow-up questions, comments.
Yeah, so good evening to all of you, and also the leaders that are speaking so eloquently here. The first thing, Mike, that comes to mind for me, which is a point of vindication. I was speaking to a big corporate today and saying, I do not envisage big policy pulls either to the left or to the right in South Africa. I'm happy that on this issue of social grants, there is consensus about that. There's consensus about that. Now, my issue, and I think obviously the nuances are noted. The other thing that I think we should note in South Africa is for politicians not to speak as though they just landed from the moon. And the reason why this is important, they must know what is existing government policy today and what is not working about it. Because only when you acknowledge what is it that's being done and what's not right about it, can you find ways to say, when I come in, this is how I'm going to do things. So I'm going to follow up with them by highlighting some of these things, which don't need them to say, identify new things to be done, but how to improve so for example, around the issue of building own property. This is government policy. One of the ways in which government, and I can speak like this because I've worked in local government, the idea of providing serviced sites as a start-up for people to then build their own properties is government policy. So it's not something new. So how, but I think that me saying this is not saying there is no room for effective leadership and changing that so that we can get better results. So that's one. The other issue for me, there's consensus in South Africa at the moment. There is no lack of small business funding agencies. You have IDC that funds big business, and then you've got IDC that funds small businesses. You've got small enterprise finance agency. You've got CEDA. You've got NYDA. You've got then the provincial-based banks that provide small business support. In the Eastern Cape, you would have an Eastern Cape Development Corporation, and then you would have the Isiqalo Youth Fund and all of these things. What is the issues are for me? It points to, one, that there's agreement that these things need to be done. But what is it about them? Why aren't we not generating a critical mass of entrepreneurs when we have them? We have the DTI that promotes, that takes already, Sis Nobuntu, that already takes South Africa to the world through the EMEA program, export, blah, blah, blah program, which the DTI does, working with provincial and other agencies. What is it about it that's failing to get us the right traction? And I think that that's where so politicians who are applied, for me, are going to not speak like they just landed from the moon, but they're going to tell us what is there and why it's not working. And lastly, Mike, for this round, we know that what is not working is putting effective, passionate, competent leadership in positions, right? Now, all of the political parties here, I don't know how they nurture the development of leaders and then make sure that those leaders who are competent make their way into leadership positions. What we have instead among political parties in South Africa is the tendency to build pathways to leadership based on cliques. So if you are a friend of so-and-so, you are likely going to be a leader, not because you have capabilities, but because you are in close proximity to so-and-so. Now, if we can eliminate in our leadership selection processes this idea of getting people into leadership because they are close to so-and-so, and put people in leadership because when they were in student politics, they proved themselves with competency that they can lead. When they were in local government, they proved themselves. So for me, those two things. One, the application to say, here are government programs, this is how we can change them. Even the issue of title deeds. Back in the this was started in Nelson Mandela Bay in the mid-2000s, where people after 8 years, then they get given the title deed to say, you've owned the house, now you have the title deed. But again, you know, it's about how do you make sure that you change. If that system doesn't work, you change it. If it can work but it's badly implemented, you change it. And then lastly, making sure that leaders who have talent and who are, I can only say this in this class, are not sorry to swear at a university, are not butt lickers of the major leaders. How do we create paths for those leaders to become in their own political parties? Right. I'm going to have to go and repent on Sunday for swearing.
Right, so we're going to reverse the order because obviously education is a big issue in South Africa, a very, very big issue, and here's the proofs sitting right in front of us. But just about every one of the parties has got one key, very important point that I'd like to highlight and discuss with the parties. And we're going to go in reverse order. We're going to start at the end there with Lawrence from Rise Mzansi. Tell us about the bilingual education, your plan for bilingual education, Rise Mzansi.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I think, let me start here. the education system of South Africa for the longest time has been crumbling, right? And I'm going to pick out a certain law called the Norms and Standards of School Infrastructure. I think we've seen the Norms and Standards of School Infrastructure not being implemented in any way. In fact, we've seen the Minister of Basic Education trying her level best to actually dodge the law by creating a back and forth between herself, civil society, as well as Parliament, right? So there is particularly a need for South Africans to invest in education, number one, to get the norms and standards, the norms and standards of school infrastructure right and implemented. But now going back to the question that you're asking, it's quite important, particularly in township schools, right, that you create schools where learners are able to comprehend what is being said. Because number one, if we're creating schools where learners are only learning in English, it does not help learners that are speaking Setsonga, Sepedi, or Sizulu, because they do not understand that language. But as you'll see, and I know also with this institution, right, there's there's other subjects basically that are being taught in Afrikaans. So what is quite important is that you actually go meet people where they are, in a sense that you incorporate some of the languages that they actually have into the curriculum by ensuring that each and every school basically at least have at least those two languages that they speak and they're actually predominant in those different institutions.
Okay, Nobuntu, we know that you guys have got at Build One South Africa an interesting idea around education, and that is the voucher system.
Yeah,
Please explain.
absolutely. So one of the biggest issues with our education system, in fact, when we speak about Build One South Africa, one of the biggest issues with the system in South Africa, as it stands in different ways, whether you talk about the economy, whether you talk about spatial planning, whether you talk about education, is that we live in multiple South Africans. So, you know, you live with a South Africa, and depending on where you live, that determines the level of healthcare you get. Depending on where you live, that determines the level of education that you get. And so the first thing for us that is important is for parents to be able to choose the schools their children go to, and to not have a situation where you are limited by the fact that because I live in this area, my child can only go to the school and cannot go to a school that is suitable for who they are. And so the voucher system is about saying a parent has a voucher which is the equivalent of the amount that would be spent on each learner in South Africa. And they are able to use that voucher to subsidize them to take their kid to that school. That starts to democratize the education that we see. And what it does is it will cause schools to compete against each other to make sure that they are getting the learners at their schools. And in that way, you also start to see the quality of education in those schools improve. The second thing is around this 30% issue. The pass mark for a number of subjects is 30% in this country. And that is, you know, we sit and we celebrate in December or in January the pass rates that we have, that's over 80%. But the reality is that the throughput for those young people to be able to get into university is so low because a lot of them are not getting the kind of marks that they need to be able to get into university, to be able to get into TVET colleges. The second is that because of that, you then have a group or a cohort, generation after generation, of young people who are unemployable. And so we are doing young people a disservice when we're saying to them, pass cut 30%, because it doesn't set them up to do well in university, let alone to get into university, let alone to get into TVET colleges. So that is one of the other issues that we find to be very important. And then the last is making sure that you upskill teachers, upskill professionals in the education system, make sure that teachers are paid well in order to be able to attract and retain the best.
Yeah, I think teachers and SADTU is a whole separate discussion which we've got to have under governance. We've got the head of education for ActionSA with us, and that is Dr. Tutu Faleni. You have proposed a single Department of Education and a skills-based vocation stream of education after grade 10, right? First, tell us why a single Department of Education will make a difference, and then explain about the vocational training for learners after grade 10.
You'll stop me, Mike, because that's my area of specialty. I've got a PhD in education. Right. when we say a single education department, it's based on our take that you have too many ministries in cabinet. You have a duplication of portfolios in cabinet. And it is quite possible, as it has happened before in the past, that a single Ministry of Education is able to handle all areas of education, that is primary, public education, and tertiary education. So you have the basic education, what we call it now, and tertiary education. Collapse the two and have a single Ministry of Education for purposes of efficiency and delivery of service to the education sector.
But then tell me, what is Dr. Bladen Zamandi going to do?
Well, according to ActionSA, you cut cabinet by half. You cut cabinet by half and you scrap the whole thing of deputy cabinet ministers, because that's where money gets wasted also. Some of the deputies we don't know. We only hear that people are deputy ministers just occupying position and it's part of cadre deployment. You cut cabinet by half and you don't have deputy ministers and you have a single education system. It's education
And
ministry.
the skills-based vocational stream, the training for learners after grade 10, vocational training?
That has to do with exit points, right? You need learners to begin to exit. As ActionSA, we say, provide an opportunity for learners to exit at grade 10. And they get skills training shortly after grade 10 so that you prepare them for contribution to the economy.
Well, I can say, and as you can see, I actually was brought up in an era when that was an option, and it was only taken away later, and it was very, very effective.
Yeah.
Heloise Denner from Freedom Front Plus, we've already vented your idea, which I jumped the gun here because I think it's such a good idea, higher pay for teachers at poorer schools. But that's not your only suggestion for education. You're also talking about community and homeschooling being encouraged. Is that appropriate for South Africa? Should children not be encouraged to mix more?
I think it is appropriate for South Africa. I think, let me just take a step back. I think that it is an unacceptable shame, let's start there, that children in South Africa in the mainstream education system can still only go to school in English or Afrikaans. We need to look at mother tongue-based education. The research is there. It shows that children who go to school and who learn up to the highest possible level in their own mother tongue comprehends better, understands better, and can even converse better in other languages, so in English, for instance. So mother tongue education is our first point with regards to education, and that's the most important thing. And then, of course, we say that government shouldn't be as involved in our schools and in our decisions that we make for ourselves and for our children as government is with, for instance, the Bella Bill. And that's where homeschooling and community-based schools come in. Parents should have the freedom to choose where their children go to school, in what language their children go to school, what their children learn, and that's why we support that as well.
Okay, now Matusi Montwedi from the EFF, you've just opened up the wallet on this one, right? You're going to send 10,000 annual scholarships for top global universities, R1 million grant for every black PhD student. Nothing for coloured PhD students, Indian PhD students, white PhD students, only black PhD students. Is that right?
Okay. No. I thought one would start by responding to what was raised, that we did not just land now as the EFF. We did a diagnosis that informed what is it that must be part of our manifesto. And in our manifesto, it is very clear that black people remain very far from either participation in the economy. Now, the EFF is about creating equality. The EFF is about making sure that black people find opportunities that they never had access to before. Hence, we are clear, we are not ashamed to be saying that is what we'll be offering to black students, because when you go to university here, where you are, Many white students come to the university driving themselves in their own cars. What about black students? Now, we are not going to be shy or apologetic if we want to uplift black students and say we want to see them there also with their equals there. So we're not going to be ashamed. But I thought one must actually respond on a number of issues that you said. I don't know if we'll get an opportunity or not.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. No, I think one issue that, my apologies, one issue that was raised was about services that it's a government policy that people must be given stands. It's a government policy that about payment their NSFAS, that student, but currently not all deserving students do get. So whether there's a policy in government that people must be given service stands for them to build, they are unable to build their own houses. Why? It is because of our economy. It is because of the banking sector that is white-owned, the banking sector, where you find that people are excluded from being funded for them to build their own houses due to the color of their skin. It has happened here in South Africa. So it's not whether laws are there, but these laws that are there, things are not happening. You spoke of CIFA and all of this financial sector that do assist. I wish you could listen to meetings of portfolio committees in Parliament. There's a lot of money that gets returned because the ANC government has for the past 30 years appointed cadres who are unable to ensure that these services go to people that they deserve. A lot of government budgets returned unused. Why? Because you have irrelevant people that are unable to implement and make sure that our people are assisted. Those things that are there. If you go to the agricultural sector, you find in the agricultural sector that indeed there are people that do get land, but you give people land, you've not prepared them. So that's why most of the projects would say they are failed, because you don't give people that are deserving. The ANC government has for the past 30 years been creating farmers that fail, whilst the real farmers are sitting there remaining landless. And as the EFF were saying, through this election, we want to make sure that we give our people land. We did a diagnosis. Since 1994, only 7% of South Africa's land, stolen land, was returned by the ANC through willing buyer, willing seller, which is not working.
Right. If we can go back to complete our questions around education to Liam Jacobs from the Democratic Alliance. You want to promote science, technology, engineering, and maths, and strengthen the district model. But you're going to have to do that with the current teachers that are members of the South African Democratic Teachers Union. Is it possible?
Okay, so first things first. Am I audible? You can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So first things first, I want to actually talk to what was said regarding how leaders end up in their positions, right? I'm of the full agreement that you're not supposed to get from point A to point B because you're good at kissing mpundu. It's not supposed to be the case. You are supposed to be there based on merit. And as the Democratic Alliance, that is something that we practice. We have an 11-stage candidate process that involves all sorts of tests and interviews and tests your capacity on the ground, your canvassing, and so on and so forth. And that then results in the following. It results in, people who just sit, getting out of the system, and 23-year-olds that work becoming members of parliament. And that is something that is happening within the Democratic Alliance, not as a result of what you've mentioned, but as a result of meritocracy. Now, to talk to the question of schools, I think we can't talk about science and we can't talk about technology, can't talk about all of these very far removed concepts if we don't first talk about children in the Eastern Cape that have to cross rivers to go to school. We don't talk about children that have to look death in the eyes as they go to school. We have to address a lot of other things before we can actually start talking about education, and education just so happens to be one of those things. Now, regarding that, it is very important that we acknowledge that as much as teachers may be members of unions, that they are still teachers at the end of the day, that they still ought to be valued as teachers at the end of the day. And if we are strengthening a district model, if we are really strengthening the ability of teachers to teach, what we are going to find is one of the priorities of the DA, which is to triple the amount of grade 4 learners that can read for meaning. Because we currently sit with 81% of grade 4 learners who are unable to read for meaning, and that is unacceptable. We have to capacitate our teachers, and we also have to remove politics from the school. What we have to do is we have to ensure that SGBs do have the power that they so deserve within their schools. It can't be that a politically manipulated union can govern the lives of teachers and can govern the lives of pupils in schools. This can't be the order of the day, and it is something that has to change.
Right. Moving on to the party in power, the party that runs the education system. Right? The ANC. Oageng Molapisi, I want to ask you, because I picked up this point, that you say that you want to expand skills development in data analytics and artificial intelligence. That's one of your manifesto issues around education. Now, 81% of young kids can't read for meaning. Is it not just a waste of ink on paper to say that you want to expand skills development in data analytics and artificial intelligence when people can't read?
Look, as the ANC in the past 8 years, we must acknowledge that it was not easy to be where we are today. So for us, it's important to make sure that we invest in skills, because as you can see that in South Africa, we have a lot of young people that are not employed. So for us to invest there is to make sure that we take what belongs to us, because remember of the apartheid systems, let me make an example. Here in Northwest, we are a platinum province. All our goals go to oversee. We've got a lot of mines here, but because of the skills that our people are showing, our people are taking gold today. So what we are trying to do is that we must invest in our money to make sure that we skill our people, to make sure that the gold that we get from here, it will be able to make those things. We must take back our resources that we are taking out of the country to use them here.
So, what has stopped you from doing this over the last 30 years?
Sorry?
Who has stopped you from doing this over the past 30 years?
What stopped us?
Yeah.
No, nothing stopped us.
So why didn't you do it?
No, we've been pushing, we've been doing whatever we can to make sure that we take those minerals. Remember, on the apartheid systems, you people who left apartheid system, they make sure when we took over in 1994, they have made sure that they close all the policies to make sure that it is becoming difficult for us to get our minerals back. But we tried our level best, and we are at that stage now to make sure, and we are ready to take back what belongs to us. We are going to take those minerals back to us. We will make sure that here in Northwest, we are going to manufacture the cars. Here in Northwest, we'll make sure that we will make those things and take them to overseas. We are going to take our monoto back to our people.
Dr. Mtimka, you are involved in education. Which of those ideas work for you? Which resonate with you?
Thank you. Thanks a lot once again, Mike. I'm quite happy with the level of thinking and how applied it is among the parties. Now, I am a systems theorist. I believe in synergy. So I think there are great ideas that are coming up across the board. I like the rebuttals. Thanks a lot for those. So the test becomes this. When you get to negotiate coalitions on the 2nd or 3rd of June, what then tends to happen is that despite these wonderful ideas that we've seen, these ideas are going to be marginalized when coalition discussions are taking place. in favor of what position must be given to who, and then also what is going to sustain the coalitions afterwards. And by the way, this is me commenting. Fortunately, I don't have the same burden that you have to pose questions to them. So I'm just commenting. So you are here, you are hearing them, they share these wonderful ideas, but this is not the start of this process. We've had this over and over. And I'm saying to you as voters, the tendency is for politicians when it matters most, to not negotiate in good faith, to forget these very wonderful ideas which need to make their way to policy making. So the first test becomes the coalition making process. The second test becomes, to what extent is there humility enough to say, if we are the governing party, not all the great ideas are going to come from us. They may come from our opponents. And also, if you are the opponent, do you have enough maturity to say, yes, we thought of that idea, but now we are governing, and in the interest of what we're doing, let's bring this idea that originated from us, but let's take what you came with, let's take what so-and-so came with, and build something that we're going to collaborate to make sure that it is bigger than us that we are going to implement. And then lastly, very important, politicians need to recognize that there is a reason why we have a political arm and an administrative arm. There is a reason why we also have the business sector and other people who are not politicians, who are never going to be politicians, but can implement things as best as they can. So the test then becomes, one, you put the matters forward when you negotiate coalitions. Two, you are humble enough to create packs that are bigger than yourselves. And then three, to know that when you have to deploy people to implement, they don't have to be a comrade in, but can be people who have built their careers implementing things in South Africa and outside of this country, some of them. And so how do you create the space to say, we've come up with the policies, but let us now use our political power to create an enabling environment so that officials whom we are going to employ on merit can implement, and then businesses and non-profits that are there and are excelling can be enabled through either funding or support to do what they need to do. I like what Mr. Mzansi said about so funding has been given to people, and umama from the ANC, has been given to people who were not farmers and were asked, hey, comrades, can you come together and form a farming enterprise so that you can be given a farm? It's important that going forward, we stop that thing and give people who farm. And now, this test is going to be on the EFF, on the DA, on Bosa, on ActionSA and Rise, and Freedom Front Plus. Can you truly do it when you are not guaranteed that this person is going to say, I am here because of the DA, I am here because of the ANC? Can you be vulnerable enough to say, I've created the space, let me throw it in the kitty and allow people to implement, and even if they don't come from my party?
Well, they better be vulnerable enough because we're heading to coalitions, whether we like it or not. So, this is about to get a little bit hot in here, so do you mind if I take my tie off? I think it's time for us to get serious here, because now we're going to start talking about the stuff. We're going to talk about governance.
Let's decolonize your attire.
But we've decolonized some of the attire, as my friend here said, and now we're going to start talking about governance and corruption. So we're going to make this quite simple. I'm going to make this quite simple at the risk, I don't want to sound like I'm being disrespectful to the panel. Who in the panel believes, if just by show of hands, if you don't mind, if you think that it's beneath you, please don't do it. that the size of government should be reduced.
The size of what?
Right.
What? What do you say?
The size of government should be reduced.
You don't get a vote.
They'll never
Ongama,
agree
you don't
with
get a
this
vote.
Yeah, no, I think
Okay. 6 out of 7 think that the size of the government should be reduced. Which of our panel believes that we should ban cadre deployment?
Guess what?
Okay.
You should what?
I think we understand.
No, we agree. Yes.
I think we understand that question. I don't think we need to put that to people individually because I think we already have a big answer there. So let's keep going with crime, corruption, because it's a very serious issue in this country. And I want to pick up, starting off with my Molapisi. You've put on in the manifesto, South Africa requires honest, capable, and dedicated leaders. Really? Really?
Yes.
Okay. You're going to stand by that statement. After chapters and books of the state capture, speaker going to jail, all of this, you still believe that you guys with a straight face can say South Africa requires honest, capable, and dedicated leaders, when it's your leaders that are the opposite of all of that?
Yes, I believe that we must acknowledge as the African National Congress that mistakes have been done. We are not perfect. But also, the ANC that we are in now, remember we are in 30 years in government. It was not easy to be where we are today. And I agree with you that it's very much important. That is why you see the ANC is rooting out those who are corrupt. Today, people are getting arrested for the things that they've been doing. Because it's not, they were not said, ANC can deploy you to say, go and govern in this department. But ANC but what ANC did not say to you to do is to steal what belongs to the poor of the poorest. So people must be arrested. We agree that we are cleaning this system as the ANC, and we are going to make sure that we put capable leaders who are educated and make sure that they lead this government in the next coming 30 years. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, we said earlier that we'll question the answers, but some answers don't need to be questioned. Let's move on to Liam from the DA. You're talking about decentralizing policing down to capable provincial and metro government. Clearly, you have the Western Cape in mind, because we're in a province that does not have one unqualified audit. Do you think it's still a good idea to decentralize policing in a province like the Northwest?
Well, Mike, before I answer that, I'd just like to say, on behalf of people who've lost their lives and who've lost their futures, thanks to we've made mistakes, we are
And we are correcting
we
them.
are very,
And we are busy
and we're correcting them. We're busy
Yes.
correcting them. Okay. You can say that to them, not to the rest of us. But the reality of the day is that that disrespects every single South African that wants dignity in their lives, that wants a job, and that wants a future, not only for themselves, but for their children. That is what that statement disrespects and spits in the face of. Now, Mike, on the topic of decentralizing police, it is absolutely important that we remove the power of policing in its entirety from Bekitele. There is no way we can afford a man who says that a woman, if you are a woman in South Africa, you are lucky to be raped only once with all the policing power in this country. There is no way we can say that. And that is what the likes of Bekitele are saying. We are saying that it is provinces, that it is municipalities that must allocate resources to ensure that their communities are safer. We can't have unsafe communities. And we don't just say that we want decentralized policing. We do that. We ensure, yes, Cape Flats, let me answer that. So we ensure that we have policing in our areas. We ensure that metros, that the places where we govern, the province that we govern, has policing that meets the needs of its communities. Someone in the audience said Cape Flats. The reality of the day is the following, is that crime has gone down in the Western Cape thanks to our policy. That is the reality. So in a province like the Northwest, where you have people getting killed, where you have students getting killed in the street, where you have farmers that are getting killed, it is of utmost importance that we devolve policing to ensure that our communities are safer. And we are also introducing the devolution of powers bill within the Western Cape to ensure that provinces themselves can decide where they want to allocate resources for policing to make our society safer. And if you disagree with a safer society, you disagree with a prosperous society, and that is the reality.
Right. Let's move on to the EFF. Matusi, I've read your manifesto, and you say that you're going to retrain the police by 2027, and you're going to enforce the fact that the real enemy in South Africa is whites, right? South Africa has over 80 murders a day. Are you really saying that the real enemy is whites?
Okay. It is not true. We as the EFF are in no record saying the real enemies are white people.
It's in your manifesto.
No, show me in the manifesto where it is.
I'll gladly show
Now,
you your manifesto.
what we are, the only thing that we are fighting for is to fight for a space for black people to be on the table, for us to own the means of
They
production.
own the table.
It's for us to, not this one, it's for us as black people to own land. It can't be that South Africa's land is not reflective
We're not
of
talking
the
about land yet,
demographics
we're talking about
of South
crime.
Africa.
You said that white people
the
are
reason, now, I know we are not talking about land, but land is in the hands of white people. Hence, you quickly conclude that we are saying what we are saying about white people. So we're talking about land. We're not we're land ownership. That is our issue.
We're going to get to
Now,
land in a second.
The other issue that is raised is that it is not true that the ANC is fighting corruption. The ANC will never fight corruption. Today, the ANC is a beneficiary of Chancellor House.
Okay.
That is continuing to destroy ESCOM. Hence, today, we've been having load shedding.
Okay.
Now, if the ANC wants to deal with corruption, they must start to disassociate themselves with such. And the other thing that I want to really quickly talk to that you raised is on the issue of marginalizing our ideas for the purpose of coalitions and positions. In the EFF, we've got very capable leaders that to this far, no one has ever pointed a finger to them that this is what they did corruptly and it stood the test of time. We are not going to be marginalizing our ideas. We never did that.
Right.
Can I finish? Can I just finish?
There are
We
allegations.
never, I'm closing. We never did that. And the EFF government is going to be for competent South Africans who are qualified with experience for them to work and deliver in government. Like we did in the city of Tshwane, of Joburg there. We supported him and Mashaba. He's not an EFF person. Because we believed that what he was doing, it's something that was in the interest of our people. So for us, we don't believe in cadre deployment. We don't have a list of cadres, that irrespective, so you are number 10 and you must go there. Even when we're not like the ANC.
In response.
Quick one, just a quick one around this issue of the conduct of the EFF. I'm not going to mention the municipality, but we know of instances where your comrades are chairing MPAC and end up instead, because MPAC is meant to be holding municipalities accountable, where they end up working with the executive to help the executive escape accountability. I don't want to go into the details about what deals get to be made. So I understand that all parties are big and people will do things. But I'm saying you guys must be careful of overconfidence that it keeps you blind of what some of your colleagues do at a subnational level, entering into deals that make them not do their jobs.
Right,
Thank
and
you.
we, yeah.
I hear what
Don't
you're
worry,
saying.
I'll switch it on.
I hear what you're saying, and as the EFF, we want people to bring such things to the front, so that we're able to deal with them. We're here in JB Max. Our branches of the EFF have raised similar concerns to that in the JB Max municipality. We're not in bed with them. We will continue to fight them for as long as there are issues. We're not going to be in bed with people that are not doing anything in the interest of our communities. So we're not going to be striking any deals. If there's an example of such a municipality, go and report to the EFF and say, I have reported these incidents to you. You have not done anything. We're not going to allow remnants of corrupt people who are in the EFF, who then want to paint the EFF as a corrupt organization, when the EFF is not a corrupt organization. So just give us one. We'll report next time. What have you done with that one incident?
Matusi, we asked some hard questions of the ANC. Quite rightly, the DA people will mention the Cape Flats. Now we've got a bit of a track record with the EFF. You're running coalition governments in Gauteng, right? And for the first time in 3 years, Ekurhuleni did not get an unqualified audit. And you guys are in charge of the finance portfolio, right? There's money that has gone missing. And all the EFF did, instead of addressing the problem, was to complain that you got an unqualified audit. Where is your clean governance?
Okay, we must put this very clear. We're not into any coalition with anyone.
You are in coalition.
We're not in, we have not signed. We have not signed any coalition agreement with anyone as the EFF. Now, it must be stated that yes, indeed, in Ekurhuleni, the chair of the Gauteng EFF is a leader in that space of finance. Now, the ANC DA ActionSA, they are trying every trick in the book to discredit.
Now, this is the Auditor General, please. We're talking about the audit by the Auditor General.
The ANC and DA in Gauteng and ActionSA, they are trying every trick in the book to taint the image of the EFF. There are good achievements. There are good achievements that we as the EFF have achieved. And it must not only be isolated to Gauteng. There are good things that we have achieved as the EFF, also in Gauteng. For the first time, we were able to write off debts of our indigents. No one is looking at that because debts of our indigents have been sitting there accruing interest. Municipalities sending lawyers to them to recover the debts. It's through an EFF achievement that we did there.
To be fair to the ANC, if they had written off those debts, you'd be all over them.
No, we've been doing them.
If the ANC had written off those debts, you would be complaining about their bad governance.
We will never complain. We appreciate if there's anything good done by any political party. It has never happened that even here in JB Max, you still have people that are indigents whose debts are 10 or more years old. Every time when they go to buy electricity, for 100 rand, they only get 10 rand worth of units for electricity because the rest of the money is taken for them to service their debts. So let them here write off the debts. We will support them. For us, it's not about who does it. Even if it's you that writes off our debts of our indigents, we will support you, irrespective of who has done it as a political party.
Okay. Right. Let's move on to some more. Let's move on to some more ideas around crime, corruption, policing. to Heloise Denner from Freedom Front Plus. You have made a strong point about returning to the prosecutor-driven investigations. That is really just another reimagining of the Scorpions, isn't it? That's what the Scorpions did.
That would basically be it, yes.
Okay, so who here, once again, would not be in favor of prosecutor-driven investigations?
What? I don't need to hear.
Because we know that the ANC are against it because they shut down the Scorpion.
What? What are you saying? Can you repeat the question again?
Sorry?
Can you repeat the question? Can you repeat what you just said now?
The question is, do you support prosecutor-driven investigations like the Scorpions were?
Yes, we do.
But then why did you shut them down? And why don't you reintroduce it?
As I've said to you before, Professor, that it's not like all of us as politicians,
No.
we are perfect. I say that. And that is why you see that the system that we have put now of prosecuting people, we are making sure as the African National Congress that whoever that have made crime or corruption must account, must be arrested. We are agreeing on that one. That one, we are ANC is very clear about it. That hence you see today that our Speaker of Parliament resigned because of that. ANC told him that you must be accountable for your own corruption.
Right. We're moving on to ActionSA.
Mike, can I just...
Sorry, Heloise.
Can I just reply on that? I don't know if it's on.
Yeah, they'll turn it on as you speak. Don't worry.
Okay. I don't understand the colleague from the ANC's answer because it was the ANC who disbanded the Scorpions in the first place.
Yeah.
And we are not going to eradicate crime in South Africa if we don't, first of all, get rid of corruption. We won't eradicate crime in South Africa while we are being run by a government of criminals. That's the first thing. The second thing is the police force has to be capacitated with resources, with staff. There aren't enough police officers at all for the number of people that have to be protected in this country. And then we have to take hands with private security networks, with rural security networks, and we have to capacitate private citizens who have the capacity and the expertise to own firearms as well. But while we are being run by a government of criminals, we will not eradicate crime in this country.
Dr. Tutu Faleni, you're also in favor of easier access to guns.
Can you hear me? Yeah,
Yes.
I wanted to pick up on the issue of prosecution, right? Why do we prosecute? Why does the state prosecute? People are being prosecuted because they've broken the law. They've broken the laws of the country. Now, what is the problem currently? One is that there is a public perception that there is selective prosecution. So some people are prosecuted and others are not prosecuted. And that is the perception of the public. And as ActionSA, we want to make sure that everybody who has broken the laws of this country by corruption or any other action that is against the law will be prosecuted. And people must be prosecuted speedily. You cannot delay in prosecuting people. You must prosecute as early as possible. And that means capacitating the prosecuting authority so that the prosecuting authority has got sufficient resources to prosecute. I'm told that at the speed that we are going, a lot of people may not even see the courts. And we need to bring more thieves who have stolen from government in court. It means we must capacitate the prosecution authority to be able to prosecute people as quickly as possible. The prosecution raises issues of ethical leadership. If leadership is ethical, Leadership will know when they should step down from government. You don't have to be called by a political party to step down. The mere fact that there are serious allegations and that you have been called to appear in the state capture, it means you must step down. But look at the list of the current governing political party. Who is at the top? Some of the people who have been called to appear before the state capture with serious allegations of corruption, they are somewhere in the top 10 of the ANC list. We need ethical leaders who will say, I'm not worthy to become a public representative. I must step down. Not because my party says I must step down. You step down because you are not worthy and you are not ethical. And this is not in the interest of the people of South Africa.
Nobuntu.
So I want to first start by responding to the MEC who said that the ANC is getting rid of those who are corrupt from its leadership. And that's simply not true. The ANC is getting rid of those who've fallen out of favor. That's what the ANC is doing. Because if the ANC was getting rid of those who are corrupt, there are names that are listed in the state capture report that have not been touched. So if you were doing that, they too would be people that you would be getting rid of. That's the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing I wanted to say is when you talk about safety, when you talk about the issue of crime and the criminal justice system, first of all, when you talk about law enforcement, it starts there. When you have a system that is corrupt right from the head, what happens is that the whole system is corrupt. What you see with the policing system in this country, the law enforcement system, is that there are corrupt officials there. And so the first thing that must happen is that those who are in any way have found to be corrupt, they must be removed from the system. Because when you have senior police and you have senior people in the policing system that are corrupt, the whole system is going to be corrupt. You have cases that go unsolved simply because people are being paid for those cases to not be solved. You have criminals walking around because people have been bribed for criminals to be walking around. So that's the first thing that needs to happen. The second is then that you have to resource and digitize the system. The reason we are still using manual dockets is because it is not in the interests of those who are in leadership and are corrupt themselves and themselves don't want to be arrested. So there has to be the political will from the right political leadership to ensure that resources are there for cases to be solved and for people to be arrested, that the system is digitized, and also that the criminal justice system is then resourced enough. First of all, you have the law enforcement where you need better skilled detectives. Then you have the criminal justice system where you have to have the kind of people who are skilled to make sure that we uproot crime in our country.
Right. Now, more concrete ideas on addressing this issue come from Mzansi. Were you talking about appointing the heads of the police service, the NPA, SARS, through public interviews? Now, that hasn't worked that well with the public protector, or are you thinking about different public interviews?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I think, number one, the policing system and many other systems in South Africa have been heavily politicized, right? And this is exactly why we have the corruption that we're seeing today. And as Mzansi, we're thinking that the best way to actually go and fix this problem is by ensuring that you actually subject people to scrutiny, public scrutiny, number one, because they're going to be serving the public. But number two, you hire people based on meritocracy, right? So some of the things that we're thinking around doing essentially when we're going into governance is ensuring that when you are appointing basically the leaders or the people that go and serve in the highest office, you need to ensure that these people are, number one, people that are interviewed by the public, but number two, these people are people that are going to be able to open themselves up to the public, because at the end of the day, they're not going to be going there to serve themselves, or they're going to be going to serve, the public at large. So it's quite important that we deal with the corruption that exists at a higher level, and that is the politicization of, the appointments that are key to this country. Because you cannot have a police minister that is playing basically, the whole idea is that when you are appointing political figures, political figures should be able to play an oversight role, and they should not be involved essentially in the work of technocrats and in appointing who sits as a technocrat, because the work of police basically is technocratical. That's why Mzansi is saying that we must be able to go and professionalize that service to ensure that it's not political. And today, when it's Mapisa Ngakula, you cannot be able to arrest that person because it is politically influenced.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting, some of the things that have been coming up. One of the things I've been talking about as far as the devolution of powers to lower structures is that, you see, the government is being disingenuous about resisting that call from the DA. The reason being, on metropolis and in housing, we already have a system of devolution. So, for example, municipalities were able to build competencies so that they can bypass provincial government and be allocated funding directly from national government. Now, there was a qualifying criteria to get municipalities to reach particular competencies first before they can receive that devolution of power. So I'm saying the ANC needs to rethink this because we're already doing it. It's already as part of the instruments, right, that are there to devolve more powers to local structures. We do it in housing. Check it, this arrangement of the accreditation of municipalities to be able to not just plan databases and administer the housing delivery program, but to conceptualize, do business cases, and get funding directly from national government. Currently, all municipalities get funding from provincial government for housing, but those that have proved competencies, they get allocations directly from national government. So I'm saying, if we've built a mechanism to test the competencies of the local structures, why can't we devolve the powers? Same as Metropolis. Same as Metropolis. Metropolis, if a municipality wants Metropolis, there's a framework already that exists for how they can be tested to check whether they have the capabilities to do it, and they do it. The other thing, though, that is necessary, that's going to be interesting, is that once Gauteng and KZN are under coalition governments, I have this hypothesis that the Western Cape is not going to be alone in calling for devolution of powers. Even those provinces are going to join them. And it's interesting how those may begin to put pressure on federalist politics in the country as we go into further coalitions. Because remember, the assumption that was made when the ANC resisted federalism was that it didn't want it too early when we were a divided society. But now that it will be transformed political societies, if you like, in the provinces. I think that we are not done with the federalism debate. Lastly, if we look at what's happening, I mean, currently, I'm sure young people are on Twitter here. Currently, General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi is trending because he comes from a special forces background and has decided that in KZN, he's going to do what Rodrigo Duterte did in Manila and then also in the whole of Philippines, where he takes the fight to the criminals. Now, all of a sudden, we are raising debates about extrajudicial killings. And this guy has got an attitude in KZN that it's not going to be cops who die, it's going to be the criminals. And it's interesting what this is going to do, because if we're going to use the evidence of Manila in the Philippines, as well as the country itself, sometimes it has taken a rogue guy, a person which we see as rogue from a democratic principle point of view, to do that thing where they just clean up and they kill people, and all of a sudden everybody behaves well. Because a state that does not have a monopoly of violence is not just going to deal with criminal gangs, but those gangs morph into groups that actually undermine the authority of the state, where you find that we become a Mexico. And in fact, it's interesting, in South Africa, we have already, in many ways, become a Mexico, where police know that there are protection fees that are paid by business people. I mean, in New Brighton, for example, where people know that there's protection fees. You go and report to the police to say, it's these gangsters that are making me pay protection fees. And police say it's tough, because now it's become part of a complex web of a criminality and policing underworld that's in power. Anyway, it's interesting. This is me saying some of the ideas, again, that are coming up are not bad ideas if we can just go over the acrimonious politics, which sometimes are not necessary.
Yeah, because we're playing with some serious stuff here. We see what happened in Haiti, where the government got displaced by gangs.
Yeah.
Right, this can happen these days. But now we're going to get on to a topic which may be of a little bit of interest to some people, and that is land. And when we talk land, I think we know where we should start, right? Expropriate all land without compensation. All land must be owned by the state, right? Which means none of you, nobody sitting here, can own their own land, because it's all owned by the state. Is that right? Matusi? Yes. The government owns all the land. Somebody sits in Pretoria and says, you get a house, you get his house, you get a good farm, you get a lousy farm in the middle of the Karoo. I like you, but I don't like you. In fact, it turns out my brother-in-law is looking for a house just like yours. How do you intend to keep control of this when you have all the land under your control?
We are saying all South Africa's land must be under the custodianship of the state. It doesn't end there, for equal redistribution. So there's a reason why we are saying it must be under the custodianship of the state, so that we avoid a situation where other people would then own more hectareage of land as opposed to the other. So land must be under the custodianship of the state for equal redistribution, so that when people want land, they should equally be allocated that piece of land for use. There are pockets and pockets of land that today...
So what is the model you're using? Where has this worked?
As you asked before, what is it that, did we just land? We have not landed. As part of the diagnosis that we did, we arrived at that situation to say South Africa's land must be under the custodianship of the state. You have other countries where land is under the custodianship of the state. Okay. But the model that they are using there would be totally different from what we want to implement here in the borders of South Africa.
So the government gets to decide?
Yes.
So now, let's say we do this, pass this law, and at the next election, the multi-party charter wins the election. Can they then redistribute the land and give me a big farm and give me your house? Is that okay?
We live in a constitutional democratic state. And if indeed another party wins an election, they will need to use the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa to amend that, so that they go and want to implement a policy that they as a multi-party would think would best be used in land. So yes, the same as we want to win these elections and change the willing buyer, willing seller, and say all land must be in the custodianship of the state. So it is for them to decide if that's what they want to do.
Okay, then you say that you want to restrict foreign land ownership. But you've just said nobody's going to own land.
I can't hear you.
You said in your manifesto that you're going to restrict foreign land and ownership.
I can't hear you.
You're going to restrict foreign land ownership.
Okay, yes.
They're not allowed to own land because under your government, nobody's allowed to own land.
No. Automatically, if land is in the custodianship of the state, it means no individual will be owning land, either a South African or someone from outside the country.
Okay, so there was a misprint.
So all land should be within the custodianship of the state. And why would we say of the state and have an exclusion where we're saying others must own? All South Africa's land must be within the custodianship of the land for equal redistribution and use.
Who sets up that department that redistributes the land?
I can't hear you.
Who's this land redistribution committee? Right? Now you've nationalized all the land. You've got, I presume, a committee of very wise people that sit there with a big map and they're going to allocate this land. What is going to be the basis for that?
Okay, look, as we were doing our consultation for the manifesto, we reached out to different sectors of society. The idea of land being under the custodianship of the state was agreed by the sector that we consulted, because they understand the reason why we want land to be under that custodianship. But since we would have won an election, it means we need to have technocrats in government that will ensure, through the guidance of the manifesto of the EFF, to see that such a policy is implemented without any fears or favor.
Now you put up you put up your hand. You put up your hand when you said that we should make government smaller, right? And the reason is probably because our technocrats don't do such a great job, right? And I was in the old South Africa and those technocrats didn't do such a great job either. Where are these technocrats that are going to do this brilliant job of allocating the land perfectly?
No, I think you're making a mistake. There are critical sectors of the country that when we say we need to make a government small, it does not mean we're saying we don't see agriculture as important. We need to have a cluster, perhaps where we say this is an economic cluster, where certain responsibilities that would be segregated, say it's finance, it's this and that, would form part of that particular cluster. That's how we plan to make government smaller. Not to say, will not say agriculture is not important or this is not important.
And when they do a bad job, do you have a commission of inquiry?
I beg your pardon?
I said, if they do a bad job, do we have a commission of inquiry?
If anyone does a bad job, the criminal justice system in South Africa must be able to act without any fear or favor, like we are seeing today, with the president of the ANC protected by the same criminal justice system that we are expecting it to make sure that there's law and order in the country.
Okay. Now, you also favor free movement of people across Africa.
Okay. Yes.
So, border goes down, White Ridge, we just turn that into a 6-lane highway.
The founding manifesto of the EFF, as was adopted in 2013, when you look at the logo of the EFF, it has Africa, the map of Africa there,
with a spear right through it.
Which is a clear demonstration that the EFF has interest for Africa and its people. So Africa was never as it is now. Africa is as a result of this when the white settlers arrived and started agreeing to share pockets of Africa for their own interest. So we were one at once. Only when white settlers came, they started dividing Africa for them to share. If you remember somewhere in Kruger, there's what was called the Anglo-Boer War. When that Anglo-Boer War ended, there was an agreement that you take this side of Africa, we take this side. Yeah. So as the EFF, we are totally fighting against that.
So in other words, there will be no borders under an EFF government.
If the EFF going into an election, we want a borderless Africa, we want to pride ourselves with intra-Africa trade. That's what we want to do. Okay. We want to see the development of Africa as a whole. So currently, Africa is not developed. Africa is exploited by the West. Okay. South Africa is exploited by the West. That's why today you have the IMF and the World Bank wanting to tell us what should be our position in terms of the policies that we want to implement here in South Africa. No. So we want an independent South Africa of the West. Okay, and our biggest partner should be the African countries.
Because the part of the, we'll get to this in a second, but part of the intention of tonight is to inform people of the implications of the parties out there, right? You're telling, so now, under an EFF government, we have no borders, but do we have a sovereign state? Who do you collect tax from?
Okay. I think you're talking about tax because
You know,
funding
tax
to the
is based on geography.
because funding to the South Africa's fiscus is totally dependent on the collection of taxation, which as the EFF, we don't agree. There should be alternative funding to the fiscus of South Africa, not entirely depending on the taxation as a means of funding. So anyone who does business in South Africa is obliged to pay indirect tax, which is VAT. So there are no exclusions, whether you are a foreigner or you are this. But by the fact that you'll be transacting, you are obliged to pay that. So everyone, if they are within that category of that bracket of contributing towards the taxation, that's what should happen, with no exclusions.
I presume amongst the EFF supporters there's no economics students, because I'm not sure how that's going to work. Liam, you wanted to say something.
I think one thing. If we wanted to come to an EFF manifesto launch, we wanted to come to an EFF history lesson, and we wanted to come to EFF conspiracy theories, then people would have gone to other places. But as you can see now, people are leaving because they are sick and tired of the same old, same old. We hear this thing of land reform. And the reality about land reform is as follows. You cannot sit here with airy-fairy concepts that demonize people of a particular race. You have to be practical with land reform. And that's what we've done in the Western Cape. In the Western Cape, land reform, or let me preface it with this, nationally, land reform has a success rate in the ballpark of 10%. In the Western Cape, land reform has a success rate of 87%. That is the DA difference. Now, I want to say that if we're talking about land reform, we can't just talk about it in terms of, expropriation without compensation, land to the government. We can't do that. That is impractical. What we have to talk about is how we repurpose land that is currently owned by the state. We have to talk about restoring dignity to ordinary South Africans by providing them with title deeds. And we have to talk about ensuring that we absolutely fight for individual property rights within areas that the ANC has still left under apartheid-style governance structures. It can't be the order of the day that people living in what used to be known as Bantustans still don't have individual property rights. That is not acceptable. And if we were to have that, if we were to continue with this barrage of collectivism, or we were to continue with this barrage of land through the custodianship of the state, we're going to go nowhere. We need to talk about practical things that matter to the lives of South Africans, and we need to practicalize what it is that we stand for. We can't exist in a dream state anymore. We have to exist in a land of pragmatism. We've seen what a dream state has done, and we saw how it has ruined the lives of ordinary South Africans. We must be practical.
A couple of people want to respond. I'm first going to go to Dr. Tutu Faleni from the ActionSA, and Heloise will come to you after that.
I think I want to respond, Mike, but it's an emotional issue. And because of the legacy of apartheid, that we have to deal with the issue of land reform. But I want to give you a practical example. I've got two medical doctors that I know. One is Afrikaans speaking. He bought a plot of land. He has been servicing 3 generations of my family, my parents, myself, and my children, as a medical doctor. He bought a plot of land, which he owns, living and doing some bit of small-time farming. I've got a black friend who's a medical doctor, bought a plot of land, also doing some small-time farming. Are you going, on the basis of race, are you going to expropriate the land that is owned by the white doctor just because he's white? And he worked his way to own that plot of land. Right? So what criteria are you going to use to expropriate land? It must not be a racial issue. We must remember that Constitution, our own Constitution, all of us here, allows for private ownership of land. You have the right to own land, like the example I've made about the 2 doctors. One is black and the other one is wide. And what ActionSA proposes is that we must make it possible for people to have access to land by way of opening an opportunity fund. Once you have a growing economy and you are able to empower people in terms of finance and fund so that they are able to access land, that will make the process of land redistribution easy, right? Instead of you going to a white person and saying, no, I'm taking this land because you happen to be white. That is not going to work in the South Africa that we want.
Right, Heloise, many of your supporters are those landowners that the EFF have in their sights.
Mike, ironically, the EFF's logo is jobs and land now, but jobs and land, expropriation without compensation and jobs don't go together. Jobs come with economic growth. Economic growth happens when there's a free market system where people have the security of private land and property ownership. Then we will have investments, then we will have economic growth, then we'll have job creation. Without economic growth, we won't have job creation. Our people will be impoverished until the end of time if expropriation without compensation is allowed.
Right. To Lawrence Manaka at the end there. Lawrence, I recently spoke to Songezo Zibi, and he said that the real issue around land is around urban land. Expand on that.
Yeah.
It'll come. Don't worry.
Am I audible?
You're going to... Guys, okay, cool, go.
Okay. So I think, the issue of land to Rise Mzansi pertains to nation building, right? We see nation building basically being at the center of it all. And in an article that was written by Mr. Zibi a few days ago, if you've read it, you'll quote that he said that the question of land without compensation is actually divisive, right? Because what you're then doing is that you're basing it on race. And that is no way that we go and build a nation. We are thinking that we can actually build a country that is cohesive, a country that is inclusive, by ensuring that we actually distribute land, right? So one of the things that we speak about is that we're saying that as soon as a child turns 21 and they want access to land in order for them to go and build, they must be able to get access to land for them to be able to go and build, right? In terms of now speaking to the question of urbanization, we realize that our population is growing quite quickly, basically. And then when we're speaking about land, we must be able to ensure that what we do is that in a case where people need land in urban cities, in a case where people need land essentially either in Gauteng or in Cape Town, we must be able to give them access to land, whether they are black or white or any other color. The truth is, the question of land is at the heart of nation building, and what needs to be done is that we need to ensure that we give land to the people that need it for building, people that need it for building businesses, irregardless of race.
Nobuntu.
So yeah, like has been said by my colleagues, the issue of land is a sensitive one and it's an emotional one because it's about identity. And we're in a country where there is a history of the dispossession of land. And so that is something that we can't ignore. And you know, we can never have the conversation without having that context in mind. But having said that, the majority of the land in this country is in the hands of government. So whenever we start to have a conversation about the redistribution of land, it shouldn't be a question about taking land away from citizens. It should be a question of how do we repurpose the land that exists and is in the hands of government to be able to give ownership to South Africans for the purposes of one, that issue of identity and dignity, but also for commercial purposes, because we do have land that can be available for that. For us as Build One SA, we recognize the history of dispossession of land. We understand the need for South Africans, especially previously disadvantaged South Africans, black South Africans, to be able to have access to land. But what we're saying is start with the land that is in the hands of the government and do not strip land away from other people, as my colleague has made an example, who have actually worked and built that land.
No, we've got to leave. We can't stop this conversation without speaking to Oageng Molapisi from the ANC. They've been in the government for 30 years. We'll come back to you in a sec. You had a big go at this early. But I'm confused because I went through your manifesto. It says things like more effective use of the Constitution and expropriation legislation to accelerate land reform, yet you voted for expropriation without compensation. Where does the ANC stand on land? Why haven't you given up government land to people that are crying out for land? I mean, if we can just leave it there. Where does the ANC stand on land?
No, as the ANC, we support the land distribution to these processes, but not the way the EFF want to approach it.
But you voted with it.
The land, yes, will be distributed and returned to its people. But when it's developed, we can't just take your land without compensating you. It's important for the ANC to make sure that we agree with EFF, but not the way the EFF wants to do it. Because now, what must happen now? Remember, whether we like it or not, the apartheid system, what they did to us, it's very cruel. Because they took away our mothers' cows, our mothers' land, our forefathers. So the most important thing for us to do now is to take back that land, make sure that we put manufacturing factories to make sure that the people of South Africa, they benefit, all of them, in this land. That's what we want as the ANC.
No.
It was very difficult.
It would have been great if you were in power for 30 years to do something about it.
Just a quick one. We must not distort history. It is not true that the majority of South Africa's land is under government.
No, it's not.
It's not true. So we must not come here and say things that are not true. The majority, more than 85% of South Africa's land is in the hands of whites.
No, that's a lie.
Now,
That is an absolute lie. That's an absolute lie.
I'm not surprised that
It's
political
a lie.
parties that are here.
Have a look at the 2017 land
Can
order.
I finish? Are you
Don't
also
have a look.
debating now?
You're lying.
You are debating now.
You are lying.
Or you are
Anything
facilitating.
You are lying.
No, facilitate.
You are lying.
Partial. Now,
There's a 2017 land order. You are lying.
so it's not true. Now, the other thing is that I do not expect any of the political parties here, including the ANC, to agree with the position of the EFF on land because they are funded by the Ruperts for them to ensure that they continue the perpetuation of a situation where black people's pride is actually undermined by making sure that they do not have their land.
Right, Ongama?
I think a colleague,
Right, guys, let's hear.
a colleague recently pointed out that when Stalin started, he started by nationalizing land and then went on to taking people's other properties. Now, I know, Mike, that you and I have debated this issue, and I was defending the EFF saying this is not what they are calling for. But when this colleague pointed out that that's not how Stalin started either. Stalin started saying all land and then went on to take all other properties, such as shares and everything, and then people had to go. This colleague was, and I'm going to recollect on this, how they were taking gold that was on people's teeth and melting it and all of those things. So I've said that to say South Africa's Section 25, Ngukai Tobi, the advocate, explains how it's a property clause, but it's an anti-property clause, in the sense that it gives us all that we need as it stands, right? In the sense that if your land was taken through a grab, the only challenge is that it talks about 1913, right? But it's an attempt to say, how do we resolve land issues in South Africa without sowing seeds in the process for a perpetual fight as we see in the Middle East, right? So my sense is that the land, Section 25 as it stands is correct. And if you wanted mechanism for expropriation, I agree that there is room for expropriation, but not as envisaged in terms of whole-scale expropriation, which, by the way, is not, in my view, even an African idea. It's a colonial idea, save for the fact that you're moving from the west to the east. Where I come from, land is not titled, but there are no debates about who owns the land. Our family owns the land and it's transferable, right? Now, I dread the day that all of us at home must go and bow to a politician because now they suddenly control the land. We should never agree to that in South Africa. The organic African way of ownership of land, as it stands, is correct. If we're going to correct it, if we want to change it, we can maybe give people title deeds or whatever the case may be. But do not take anything and give it to these politicians who are so prone to corruption, who are so prone to patron-client relationships, where land is going to be taken from one group to another. Just one last point. So I'm saying, is the distribution of land in South Africa at the moment fair? Absolutely not. Are there mechanisms in place to correct that? Absolutely. Have we had a government that has failed dismally on as far as agricultural land? Absolutely. Well, because how do we have politicians who have farms at the same time that communities do not have farms? At the same time that we have, politicians have farms, not one, sometimes 2, 3, or 4 farms. All of them, they've got farms which they know they're going to retire to. Now, we'll deal with all of that corruption, and we're going to see more improved ways of. Last point, the ANC undermined what the former Transkei, former Ciskei, and Homeland governments were doing. Because it was what were Ochulumente Bonomgogwa, they thought everything they were doing was not right. If you go to where I come from, Engqushwa, there was a critical mass of black farmers that owned land, were given land by the Homeland governments, which they had either expropriated or bought from white farmers that were there. And these farmers were supported. I grew up being among these farmers. Now, those people were neglected so much that now they are no longer serious farmers as they used to be. Because farming is expensive. Farming is not a child's play. Government has got to play a significant role until an enterprise reaches a particular growth threshold that they can stand on their own.
Right. Now, we are running short of time because we started late. So we're going to have questions. So we're taking questions. Before we do the questions, we're just going to do a quick honesty test here. This is an honesty test, okay? And that is, sitting here, we've got some of the brightest minds in South Africa. People who are the future of the country. And I'd like to know, honestly, not for revenge purposes or for political purposes, how many people that are sitting here the question is not who wants to own a farm. We all want to own a farm, right? So that's not the question. The question is, who would want to be a full-time farmer? I'm not so sure that this is the big issue it's made out to be. I think that some of this is based purely on revenge. But anyway, let's take questions. I can't see people. Where's the first question coming from? Please, if you can just state your name and who you want to address the question to. There's a lady at the microphone behind you. I'm looking only in one place. Am I in the right place? Okay. We'll sort it out. Right? Just keep it short, please, people, so that we can get through this.
Oh, no, thank you very much. I don't know if you can hear me, but no. My name is Butlare Edgar Matonsi from Mpumalanga. I'm doing my 5th year in this university. Oh, 5th year, I mean that I have 2 degrees already. Thank you very much. So this question that I'm having, actually there are 2, but I will start by one. Is basically aimed at young people, especially the Mzansi and comrade my sister there as well as Liam. So as much as we are concerned that the topic nowadays is the shift towards the coalition elections or the coalition government. So my question is, what concrete defensive mechanism do you believe are essential to safeguard against potential instability, conflicting agendas, and ensure effective governance and service delivery amidst diverse coalition partners? So the second one is, what specific defensive mechanism do you propose to address the thematic challenges in South Africa, such as economic inequality, corruption, and social unrest? And how then do you plan to ensure that these mechanisms are effectively implemented and sustainable in the long term? Thank you very much.
All right, so let me just get this right. We're talking to the people more on that side. Potential coalition government, how they're going to deal with economic inequality and wealth creation. Let's start with Nobuntu.
Sure. Thank you for the question on coalitions, because that's important. It's an inevitable outcome of this election. So one of the things that has happened in South Africa is that we have been so used to, in this democracy, a one-party dominant kind of government that we think that coalitions are not the norm, whereas our system, our proportional representation system actually lends itself well to a multi-party democracy. So the first thing I'd like to say is, I really just want to encourage people to start to engage coalitions in a different way, to start to engage the idea of a multi-party democracy in a different way, because essentially our very system was set up for that. So that's the first. It's to say that it's not something that we should look at. NgesiZulu, I would say, it's not something that we should look at and think, you know, this is something foreign. This is essentially what should be happening, because that is true representation of different constituencies, diverse communities, and diverse voices in this country. So how do you make sure that coalitions work? I think one of the most important things was mentioned right at the beginning, and that was about what it is, what the agenda is that political parties come into the room to talk about. It's critical that when you come into the room to engage on coalitions, it's not about positions. All these manifestos that have been presented today, I would say that about 70% of what we've said here actually aligns and can actually work together. So the first thing is to make sure that when you come and you sit around the table, what you are engaging on is, what are the policies that exist? What are the policies that we have, and what are the areas in our policies where we can actually collaborate and where things can work? I think that's the first important thing. It's to put away the issue of positions, to put away the issue of who gets what, and to say, how do we work to resolve the issues and to engage the issues in South Africa? That's the first. The second is to make sure that we engage technically in a way that outlines and frames how coalitions are going to work. I think some of the agreements we have to get into are around the issues of motions of no confidence. You know, to have agreements that say, at what point can there be a motion of no confidence, and how do we agree on, as coalition partners, on what brings us to that point where we have a motion of no confidence? Because the issues that we've seen and the instability we've seen is that as soon as there's some sort of political fallout, you suddenly have a motion of no confidence. Suddenly, because we have our own political issues and we're having power struggles, we have a motion of no confidence. We have to know that when we withdraw people from the system and from positions, it's because they are not serving South Africans.
Right. And then let's hear from the DA, who's been involved in many of the coalitions and on both the good and the bad side.
The other thing I'd just add, sorry, if I can just add one more thing.
The reality about
is that when you say coalitions are not sustainable, people often only look at the coalitions in the bigger metros and never look at smaller metros where we've had coalitions work. They never look back at the first government of national unity, which was essentially a coalition. The first KZN government, the first Western Cape government, which was essentially a coalition. And so to say that coalitions don't work in South Africa is actually to speak in a vacuum, because there are instances where we have seen coalitions in South Africa, where we see them now in other municipalities that are not as unstable.
So let me say this about coalitions in South Africa. Unfortunately, what we have in South Africa is we don't have coalitions in the true sense of the word. What we have is bribery, blackmail, and extortion within coalitions, right? We find this with parties like the Patriotic Alliance that partner up with the likes of the EFF and the African National Congress. And what we find there is not coalitions that are based on values. We find coalitions that are based on mochini. We find it that is based on position. We find it that is based on access to resources. But I must also say that before I get into how we make coalitions work and why they work, why they have the capacity to work, it is absolutely hypocritical to talk about coalitions on a stage like this when we have a multi-party charter with parties that have like-minded goals and similar values that you don't want to form a part of. How can you talk about coalitions that can rescue South Africa without forming part of the biggest bloc that is ready to rescue South Africa? I find that very, very hypocritical. But the reality of coalitions in South Africa is as follows. The DA, at times, does not govern in isolation. We have coalition partners, some seated with me right here, and we govern successfully with these coalition partners. We govern successfully where we govern. A lot of the municipalities that we do govern tend to be coalitions, and we govern very, very successfully. Whether you want to talk about unemployment rates, whether you want to talk about job creation, whether you want to talk about the fact that 99% of jobs in the previous quarter were created in the Western Cape, or whether you want to talk about the likes of, good governance that results in service delivery, you're going to talk about coalitions that the DA is a part of and where we work tremendously well with our partners. Coalitions have the capacity to work. They are going to be the future of South Africa. And to quote this party, whether you like it or not, the reality is we're going to have coalitions in South Africa. The next elections, all polling is pointing towards it. We're going to have a coalition, and it's most likely going to be a coalition that features members of the multi-party charter in a successful attempt to rescue South Africa, to destroy load shedding, to destroy water shedding, to deal with violent crime, to ensure that we have South Africans that are employed and that we lift South Africans out of poverty.
Okay, we need to take another question. Where's our microphone?
Right here. Right here.
Okay.
Right here. Okay. Speak, you can hear me.
Yeah.
Chairperson of the session, firstly, I would like to say that you are being a biased facilitator. Firstly, I think we all could see that you are taking one individual here, but it's fine. We can see what group you represent. My question. Okay, my question is mostly directed to my brother Liam there, Dilly Ding, Dilly Dong. My question will be rather very simple. Liam, you're speaking about good governance. What has the DA done for colored people in the Western Cape?
If you want to talk about things based on race, you're missing the point entirely. You must ensure that governments themselves deliver to all people regardless of where they are in society. Now, when you want to talk about how the DA has delivered for colored people in the Western Cape, I think that we have to take that entire topic and we have to acknowledge what the DA has done for all people in the Western Cape. The reality is that the DA in the Western Cape has the lowest unemployment rate in the entire country. The DA in the Western Cape that you speak of is the province that's responsible for creating jobs. And if you want to say then, because the obvious extension of this entire argument that you make traditionally goes towards, but what has the DA done for communities that are poverty and crime-ridden, we have to look at the spending priorities. If you want to tell what it is that a government's priorities are, you have to look at what the government spends its money on. The DA itself spends 75% of its budgets on alleviating poverty and on communities that are ridden with poverty and crime. In fact, where we govern, in Cape Town, 75% of the budget goes to impoverished areas. In Stellenbosch, wards in Stellenbosch get equal budgets. In the Western Cape, 75% of our budget goes towards alleviating poverty through investing in capital, through investing in service delivery, through investing in infrastructure. You create a society for all people to work in, to have dignity in. You create a society where people can raise families, where they have the capacity to raise families, and where they are able to truly realize a future that matters.
Right, where's our next question? Right, yeah. Right, let's hear the question, please.
Hi everyone, my name is Alberto Casalego. I'm currently a master's student here at the Northwest University. I have 2 university degrees. However, I cannot find permanent employment. I currently only have a part-time job that pays me less than 3,000 Rand a month. Some of you are currently MPs, some of you are inspiring MPs, and I checked your salaries this morning. Some of you are getting up to 40, 60, 80, and if you're the ex-Speaker of Parliament, I'm almost to 100 times my current monthly salary. So, when we elect you to represent us and our younger generation, who's currently suffering from a 60% unemployment rate, what are you going to do to, after these elections, ensure that all of us here, will have jobs, not just part-time jobs or temporary jobs, permanent jobs that has a decent living wage that competes with inflation?
Right. I think that the best person to answer that is the lady from the ANC. They've been in charge for the last 30 years. Why do we have 60% youth unemployment? Why do we have 60% youth unemployment?
Why what?
Youth unemployment.
Why is so much high?
Why do we have 60% of our youth that can't get jobs?
Okay.
And what do you intend to do about it?
As the ANC, if you have checked our manifesto, the president have agreed that we have put systems in place that we are going to make sure that we are going to make sure that in the next coming elections, we are going to employ more than 2.4 million young people and make sure that we are going to do that still by saying, as I repeated my statement before, that remember, we as the ANC now, we have a plan of taking back our resources and making sure that we open factories here in South Africa to make sure that we create more jobs for our people. Whether we like it or not, ANC is going to make sure that in the next coming years, our youth, we eradicate unemployment in South Africa.
Okay, well, I know that Heloise put her hand up. Let's get another view on this.
Thank you. I've mentioned,
The mic here.
I've mentioned before,
It'll come. Yeah.
I've mentioned before that economic growth is one of the most important factors with regards to job creation. But aside from economic growth, the private sector is the largest job creator in the country. Government tries to create jobs by creating posts, but the private sector needs to be assisted to stimulate job creation in our country. And how does that happen? Basic service delivery has to improve. Race-based legislation has to be removed. All rigid labor legislation that prevents the private sector from being able to create jobs has to be removed. You can't legislate someone into a job. You can stimulate the economy and ensure that the economy grows so that jobs can be created, so that people can create jobs for themselves and each other.
Yeah, Dr. Tutu Faleni, you wanted to give your input? Okay.
Right. Thanks, Mike. I think job creation is very important. It's actually one of the central issues in this election. You need to create conditions which will attract investment. Create conditions which will attract investment. If you have, for example, labor policies which are hostile to investors, it means that South Africa won't be a preferred place of investment. So we need to create conditions, for example, in the form of labor policies, which will attract investment so that we are able to create more jobs. Secondly, we need to train our graduates. These are our future leaders. We need to train them, skill them in a way that they are able to actively take part in the economy. I hold a British scholarship. When I was in England, the guy who created the Eurotunnel is a South African engineer. Do not undermine the skills of South Africans. If we give these young people who are sitting here an opportunity to participate in the economy, they'll be able to uplift others and grow the economy. And again, let's scrap BEE. It doesn't work. This thing of black economic empowerment has failed. Instead, what doesn't work, it has not worked. It has in fact enriched people in the ANC. People in the ANC have become multimillionaires because of the BEE policies. We are now sitting with the majority of people who are getting 350 per month. We don't need more people on 350. We need more people to open businesses. Let's appoint people on merit. Let's scrap this thing of BEE. What ActionSA proposes in our manifesto is an opportunity fund where people can say, I want to open a small business. You know, you create jobs because big industries invest, because big industries get created by entrepreneurs. You also create jobs through small businesses, the small micro businesses. And those people, as ActionSA, we are saying to them, we are going to open an opportunity fund so that you can access funding to become an entrepreneur. And this is an opportunity for you young people to be able to build your own businesses. And the last thing, let's appoint on merit. Let's appoint people in government on merit. You must not be appointed because you are linked to someone in the ANC. You must be appointed because you are able to do the job. Here you are as young people. You are going to graduate. You are going to apply for a job. You must not be appointed because you are connected. You must not be appointed because you are black. You must be appointed because you are capable of doing the job.
Let's hear from Matusi. Matusi.
Just a quick one. Job creation through making sure that...
Just a microphone, please.
Just a quick one.
Just wait, guys. Let's just get the mic up here. Yeah?
Yes. No, thank you. Just a quick one. We ensure that we create jobs by making sure that 50% of the minerals in South Africa are beneficiated locally so that we create industries and hire our people to come and work here. Unlike all the minerals leaving the country raw for them to go and create employment outside the borders of South Africa. The other thing is that we want to create a state-owned housing and a roads company, which will ensure that the backlog with regards to the housing in South Africa, that under the ANC government that is more than 15 years old, with the chair of the ANC living here, still failing to deliver houses to our people, we make sure that through a creation of a state-owned housing company and a roads company, we create 4 million jobs as the EFF. Lastly, through a creation of a state-owned security company, we will ensure that 1.2 million jobs are created, decent jobs with benefits, that our brothers, black brothers and sisters, are exploited by working through these security companies that are paying them peanuts. Thank you.
Lawrence Manaka from Rise Mzansi.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I think you create.
Okay.
Okay. So I think you create. So the reason we have young people in South Africa that are unemployed, I think there's no silver bullet answer to that. But one of the causes is that, number one, we have education where young people are falling through the cracks. Young people continue to drop out If you have 100,000 young people who start school this year, by the time people graduate matric, it's guaranteed that you're going to have about 10% of those people finishing matric. So you have learners that are unskilled, so therefore we need to be able to invest in education. That's number one, in order to fix the mess that we are in. But moreover, you need to be able to go and ensure that the economy is conducive, basically, for business to take place, because the state cannot employ everyone, right? So in order for you to create conditions that are conducive for business to take place, you need to deal with the corruption that currently exists in the leadership, because there is the corruption that is making the system to not be habitable, basically, for business.
Right, we're going to take our last couple of questions. Where's our microphone people?
Over here, Mr. Sham.
Okay. Right.
Evening. Yes. Evening.
Yes, you go.
My name is Nelo. I just have a question from the African National Congress. Ma'am, you said the ANC always has a plan. That was an opening statement. I just want to know, what is the ANC's plan for Minister Fikile Mbalula, who acknowledged that he lied for former President Jacob Zuma and said that a swimming pool was a fire pool? What is the ANC's plan for depopulating parts of Gauteng as well as part of the KZN for equal distribution of human resources? What is the ANC's plan regarding the increase in unemployment, especially among young people? And lastly, what is the ANC's plan regarding Gwede Mantashe, who sleeps whenever is in Parliament? Thank you.
Look,
I must just say there's no plan.
I think to be fair, those were rhetorical questions. We all know there's a manifesto out there. The poor representative of the ANC. Wait. I'm trying to protect her from herself.
Hey, let's close, man.
Let's be fair. Let's be fair. There's some questions that the panel can't answer. I think in all seriousness, those kind of questions are very... Wait, please. Hear me out. Hear me out. I think those questions... Those questions are very valid, but I don't think they can be answered here by the people here. We know the answers. There's nothing that this lady could say about it, right? I mean, I'll answer those questions. They're going to protect Gwede Mantashe. They're not going to create jobs. It's not hard.
No, you can say whatever you want to say, Prof, but as the president of the ANC has said in his manifesto, we are going to create jobs for our young people. That one is not going to change. We are going to make sure, if you have read our manifesto, we are going to make sure that those factories, we are going to develop everything here in South Africa. Definitely, for sure. By opening manufacturers, by making sure that whatever that whether at their rings, war goals, we make sure that we prepare them, we take them overseas, and to make sure that those people in the overseas, they buy from us. All the minerals that we have in South Africa, we are going to make sure that we use them to make sure that we create jobs for our own people.
Right. Let's take one last question because time's against us. So, question up there. Right. Let's hear.
But I can't.
Right there.
I can't be speaking. Good afternoon to everyone. I go by the name MG. I want to actually, before I go deep, I want to raise 2 points of orders. One, I thought maybe it would be better to raise those things because when you see on the other side there, in my right-hand side, people left. Why did the people left? Because there are two events taking place in one venue. There is an event inside the gym, there is an event outside, and people inside are making noise. Then again, we have to clarify the matter of those people who are holding mics are not doing justice to other people. The people are in the middle, which is the EFF. Why are people of the EFF not being given chance to speak? But then it's fine. Let me get to my questions, then I finish. My first question is on the ActionSA.
On 2016, the ActionSA president, Mr. Eman Mashaba, took a public platform and said that he assisted those things of insourcing because he was influenced by the EFF. Just recently, last 2 weeks back, the EFF put a motion forward of insourcing workers in Tshwane. The DA and ActionSA rejected that motion. It is clear to us as black people, just that gentleman was saying that we must not empower black people. They don't believe in black empowerment. So they don't believe in black empowerment, then they must not be given a chance to lead the country. Second, the question goes directly to Rise Mzansi and I don't know if it's DA or what there. In relation to their stance in the war of Palestine and Israel. Because we have to get the clear stance of where are they standing between the two conflicts against the Israel and Palestine. Because we know that most of them, more especially in the Rise Mzansi, they are funded by Martin Moshal, who is actually having businesses in the Israel. That's why they can't even declare what is happening or what are they standing between the two. Then lastly, it goes directly to the ANC, Minister of Human Settlement. Last week, the president took a platform when the foreign minister was saying that she's resigning as the foreign minister to encourage her to stay a little bit longer on the position. While we know that we're heading in the election 6 weeks later, what is the president trying to imply on telling the Minister of Foreign Affairs that she must stay a little bit longer, while we know that we're going to have a coalition government and Cyril Ramaphosa is not going to be the president of the country? Thank you very much.
Okay. Right, a couple of questions. We're going to start off with Tutu. Did you get that question?
He asked a question about what Mr. Herman Mashaba said. I think I'm not competent to reply for Mr. Herman Mashaba. I'm competent to reply for ActionSA. But if you ask me, there was a meeting in Ekurhuleni, and then Mr. Herman Mashaba said this. I was not in Ekurhuleni. Right?
I have no comment about that one.
Right.
No comment.
Right. I think...
Right.
Okay.
I think, Mike, the last point.
Well, wait, we can get an explanation.
Let me give you the last point. The voice which is going to determine the outcome of the elections is not the loudest voice, but is the voice of reason. Is the voice of reason. And I want to see that from the students.
Okay, let's wrap this up to Build One South Africa and Rise Mzansi. Where do you stand on Israel-Palestine?
Build One South Africa, where we stand on the issue of Palestine and Israel is on a two-state solution. And the reason for that is that you look now at what has happened since the ICJ ruling. Have the killings stopped since the ICJ ruling? They have not stopped. What you ultimately want is for people to sit at the table and negotiate and come to a solution and an agreement that is in favor of both parties and that works for both parties. If you sit here and have the kinds of solutions that actually exacerbate the killings of innocent people, then you have an issue, because what you ultimately always have to be protecting is the human rights of those women, of those children, of those people who are being killed, left, right, and center. So where we stand is to say there should be a two-state solution. It should be a negotiated settlement. And ultimately from that, you need to see the seizing of the killing of innocent people and the violation of human rights that are happening in Palestine.
Lawrence, any different? Yeah, at the end there, Rise Mzansi.
Yeah, so Rise Mzansi is quite clear on the issue. We're saying solidarity, freedom, essentially, and justice, right? And ultimately, we're calling for ceasefire. Rise Mzansi has been attending a lot of marches. We've been leading in some of those in the Western Cape as well. I think it's just a question of not following what we are doing and wanting to pinpoint and corner people on certain questions. And on the question of funding, I think it's the same thing. You just have to go up and read and then get an understanding and not actually ask questions that are a bit misinformed. Thank you.
Okay. To the lady from the ANC, why did the president want to keep the Minister of Foreign Affairs?
No, I can't comment on that one.
There you go.
Not gonna comment.
We'll give the last word to
Yes.
Matusi, who's been a great sport. Yes.
Yes. I want to speak on the Israeli.
To get the mic there in the middle.
I want to speak on the Israel-Palestinian war. The dispute there is around dispossession, where the Palestinian land was invaded to a point where there are this endless killing in that state. So as the EFF, we are fully in support of the Palestinian, and we must make it very clear that people speak of two-state solution. We don't support two-state solution. As it is, Israel is a murderous state. As it is, Israel is a racist state. So we want no association with Israel on the basis of them having massacred the people of Palestine. So we are not in support of this two-state solution. We are saying the dispossessed land of the Palestinian people must be returned to them. Thank you.
Right. There you go. A firm, clear answer. Now, we've come to the end of the night, but we have to say thank you so much to the people that have contributed. We are running against the clock. To Oageng Molapisi from the ANC, thank you. You've taken a beating tonight, but thank you. You've been a great sport. Liam Jacobs from DA, thank you. Matusi, you were a great stand-in. You did a wonderful job. To Heloise Dena, Dr. Tutu Faleni, to Nobuntu Hlazo-Webster, and to Lawrence Manaka from Rise Mzansi. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you.